Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 19 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we are going to make concrete and start doing the research we need for oil processing. Enjoy. And now the next material goal here is steel. And to do that requires concrete and coke. Tangentially related to this is crude oil processing. What's interesting is that the crude oil isn't actually required to go into steel, although we will eventually need it. And I tend to like to research widely and take care of everything that we need prior to jumping into a new resource. So we have a couple of different choices here. How about let's do coke right now, because it's pretty straightforward and it's quite interesting in that you take crushed coal and you cook it in a furnace, and now it has to be an electric furnace or the gas furnace, but you can't do it in those stone or bronze furnaces. But 4 megajoules of crushed coal go in and 6 megajoules of coke come out. It is a 100% pollution recipe. However, the coke is only a 75% pollution recipe. So the pollution of coke is the same as the coal, but you have increased the fuel yield by 50%. So that seems pretty good. So let's grab that. And since we need other things to research, how about we get our trains moving faster? Or I guess in this case, they would be stopping faster, but the effect is the same. And that should definitely use up a ton of power now. And like always, we need more bricks. So we need to figure out a coke build, and who knows exactly how much we're going to want. Since our factory is getting big enough to the point where we are sizing things based on speeds of belts now, we should probably plan around that. So let's do a coke plan, and it's not going to be in here. Forget which one is the unresearched one, but let's just go with coke. It would be this one. The output that we require is 15 per second. And that will require 15 crushed coal, which requires the 15 regular coal. And with no efficiency modules at all, we can calculate what the fuel yield of this would be. That we would be producing 15 times 6 for 90 megajoules of fuel, and we would be consuming 9.1 of it to do this conversion. So it is still a net positive to do this. Of course, we have efficiency modules, so why not use those in both machines? And by doing so, it cuts it down to 4. So we are spending 4 megajoules to turn 60 megajoules of fuel into 90. So it is definitely worth it. Also, this is a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really neat. So now we have a plan. 24 crushers and 24 furnaces. And of course, the factory always needs more bricks. And coke is done already, but we are getting close to our farms here. So when it comes to placing these bricks, we need to make sure that we don't put any in that chunk. And we did there. It would be fine. It's just, it couldn't grow any trees where there are bricks. So we might as well just kind of line it up like this, so we are not taking up any space that could be used for valuable trees. And finally got rid of the last of that copper. So we have cleared out all the stuff from the steam age. And everything here seems pretty smooth. We are filled up on all our resources, so we are making it as fast as we need it for all of our machines here. And let's just pick a spot to make it. How about we plan it here for now? It'll be pretty straightforward. And since this is going to be a bigger setup, we probably should try to mash this as tightly as we can. So it'll be something like this, although the belts are probably going to be going the other direction in this case, with it looking something like that. I am missing the fact that we don't have more robots. Unfortunately though, the portable steam engine just takes a lot of space. So you're going to have to give up night vision if you want to have any more robots. But that won't be a problem for too much longer, because before long we'll get actual electric robots, and then we won't need to have any of that stuff anymore, and we'll be able to maximize our armor's effectiveness when it comes to robots. We are going to need a bunch of efficiency modules, so we might as well just grab more now. And now we need a spot for this. Well, coal isn't going to last forever, and it's going to come from down here. So even though it's going to be out of the way, how about we kind of put it... Actually, putting it all the way down here might make a lot of sense. It's really out of the way, but it will be much less so in a little bit, because we only have 26% of our coal patch left, so before long this will actually make a lot of sense to put it here. Okay, so if we do that, that's 8, 16, and then 24. And we are almost done with our braking force, so let's do something else. The other thing we're going to need for steel is concrete, but also, importantly, concrete will let us go into oil processing. And that will be quite useful, and we should probably do that before steel. So, to make concrete, first we take gravel and silica, which are of course both made from stone, add water, and then that makes liquid concrete, and then that liquid concrete makes concrete blocks, which are a building component. And you could also take that liquid concrete and add the iron rods to make the concrete slab, and that will have a walking speed of 140%, which is better than the 120% we're getting from stone right now. So of course we'd want to upgrade that, and we get hazard concrete as well. And also, because we have automated both the delivery of stone and iron, it means that we can waste a lot of it in making concrete. And concrete is a thing that you can grind down. So when you grind down stone bricks, you just get stone back, so it doesn't have any intermediate process in order to recover it. It just becomes stone. However, concrete does turn into scrap, which you will then need to turn back into liquid concrete. So that seems like a worthy goal. And since we're here, we can clean out some stuff like inventory sensor. I'm not terribly sure if I'm going to use it in this playthrough or not, but we might as well research it to get it out of the way. It'll tell you like how far along in a crafting recipe a particular machine is. It'll tell you what its inventory is, that kind of thing. And that can help. Depends on the kind of build you do. You certainly don't need it for your factories, but it can be quite useful. The main thing I use it for are nuclear reactors, because one thing it will tell you is how hot the reactors are. And you can use that as a method for inserting fuel into them. Alright, let's switch this to be down instead. So much flashing. Make it stop. There we go. We didn't put any lights in here, but luckily it's not compact enough to the point where there's no room. So we can just kind of place these. How about every 2 poles or so? And maybe some down here. So then the coal will need to come from somewhere. It is going to be awkwardly going kind of up this middle area. So we may want to move the belt later, and in fact I kind of want to do that now. Because even though it's not really like a main bus, if you kind of orient your belts in such a way, it just moves them out of the way, so when you want to do builds, you don't have to just move a ton of belts to make it happen. And if we do this, now it is going where it needs to. And we're actually not going to need the crushed coal for anything anymore. Guess we'll just pick all of this up, because this really isn't the place we'd want to deliver crushed coal to. Okay, looks like all of the stone got cleared out, so we can properly hook this up now. And I guess we're still using this a little bit for the regular coal. So we'll get this lined up, but also it needs to go back. It actually only needs to basically connect to this belt right here. So like before, we kind of want to keep it separated. And let's do this. It might be easier to just have it do a balancer right there and go in. And we do have a lot of crushed coal right now. It looks like we have to manually place it in here first. We can't use the even distribution until we have the recipes set, which is fine. There it is. It's a little easier to see than regular coal is. And also, let's see, the halfway point is right here, which means this is where we can switch the sides. So up comes the coke. We need to merge them here. Uh-oh. Looks like they attacked, but they didn't do too much damage. The shotgun turrets do a lot of damage when they're against the wall, but it does let them get to the wall, compared to the machine gun turret, which will actually reliably hit them before they get there. But for now, that's good enough. And then say input priority is on the right, because if we have charcoal, we would want to use that before the coke. And will that reach? Almost. But it might if we do this. There we go. Because now we have our coke. And the charcoal is still better. Not only is it free from trees, but it's also a 50% pollution item rather than 75. So we still want to use it in place of coke whenever possible. that's all hooked up, which means now we can actually start making it. And it's very noisy in here, but everything's going, making lots of code. We did it right, where it's 15 per second, and that math should be about 90 megawatts in total, and all of this is only 28. Of course, coke goes into other things, and that's why we had to start on it, but it's looking good. So now we have researched concrete, but how about before we build that concrete, let's take it the next step and go into crude oil processing. It's relatively similar to vanilla, but there are some changes. First, we have our oil refinery. It's just a large iron building, but it now requires those concrete bricks that we're going to have to make. And the chemical plant, which is a smaller but still large building that also requires iron and those concrete bricks. And the pump jack, which is a small iron building. So we'll need to go out there and get oil for this. But of course, that's what you have to do. It also unlocks the gas vent. That is the way that you void gases in IR3. And it creates pollution to do so. But we'll cover that when we get to that point. The first stage of oil processing is crude oil and water, which will give us a solid product of bitumen, but also mostly heavy oil, a little bit of light oil, and an even smaller amount of petroleum. So unlike in vanilla, where you have to do advanced oil processing to split these up, you just start with it in IR3. The bitumen is an interesting item. You can create tarmac with it by adding gravel, and it's actually a pretty efficient way of making a road surface. It's the same as concrete is as far as speed. However, the bitumen actually does go into other things. It's just not right now, so it's up to you if you want to just make it disappear by turning it into tarmac, or just save it and eventually you'll be able to use it. I tend not to use tarmac since it's basically the same as concrete, except concrete can be made infinitely where the tarmac cannot. However, tarmac is useful in the sense that it is a different color, which allows you to make roads inside your factory if you specifically want them. So in other words, if you have a complicated factory and you don't want to crash into a bunch of buildings while you're driving a car, then you could build a tarmac road to just kind of remind yourself what the path is to drive through there without crashing. And also, now that we have finally a different type of fuel besides steam, we can now start filling up these canisters with petroleum fuel. And if you do that, it will be a fuel value of 12, which is twice as much as if it was steam, but also really importantly, is it will improve vehicle acceleration and top speed. So you definitely want to use the highest quality fuel for your vehicles and especially your trains, because it just makes them better. So when we have this set up, we will convert all of our vehicles to run on petroleum, which means the only thing we're using steam for, at least as it pertains to our steam derrick here, is to fill up steam cells specifically for our robots. And that's kind of funny that for a time, we will need to carry two different types of fuels, one for our robots and one for our vehicles. But that's only one square, so it's not too big a deal. And that's the basic process of crude oil processing. But of course, there are many stages to it. Doing all this now isn't strictly required, but if we take care of it now, then whenever we need to go further, it will just be waiting for us and we won't have to do all of this. So when you go through this process, you're going to find yourself overloaded on heavy oil. The one thing that heavy oil goes into is the same here. It makes lubricant, and you add steam to it to make the lubricant oil, and some sour gas, and that sour gas is a byproduct that we can turn into sulfur. So this is what we would need to do in order to make sulfur. And actually, one advantage of doing oil processing now is that it will allow us to get sulfur, which will then allow us to get cliff explosives. So I would like cliff explosives as quickly as possible, and this is definitely the path to that. So that will give us some of that sulfur that we need, and we don't need the lubricating oil now, but we will later when we have steel and we want to make motors. We will need to add that lubricant oil to it. But for now, it's something that we can just prepare, so we might as well research it. So after you've done that, you're going to find yourself overloaded on heavy oil. And then heavy oil processing. There is such a thing as too much lubricant. Indeed. So if you take heavy oil and add silica, which is just ground down stone, you will turn that 120 heavy oil into 80 light oil and 40 petroleum. And also some more sour gas, which can be turned into more sulfur, which of course is something that's good. The light oil and heavy oil cannot be burned as fuels in IR3 compared to angel bobs. They are just a byproduct you have to deal with essentially. And light oil basically goes into flamethrower ammo. And that's it. That if you have any extras and you don't need flamethrower ammo, then send it down the chain. So if you do the same process with heavy oil, where you add silica and 120 light oil and more water, you will split it 50-50 between 60 petroleum and 60 natural gas, and also more sour gas. And this is the end of the chain here, where both petroleum and natural gas are fuels you can use. However, the petroleum was made as byproducts of all of these stages. However, the natural gas is only made through this last stage. So what this means is if you start with crude oil and crack it all the way down to the very end, you will actually be left with 100% resources that you can burn for fuel. And both of them are the same, 400 kilojoules, and that's 400 kilojoules per 1 unit. So 1 unit of fluid in Factorio is very little fluid. So it's actually a lot of energy, and of course we can calculate that later on what exactly our yields would be. And between the two, the natural gas is the better one. It has 75% pollution compared to 100% for petroleum, and they have different uses. Like the natural gas cannot be turned into a fuel that goes into a vehicle until much later. So earlier on, it's basically just a cleaner fuel to use as power, whereas the petroleum is used for vehicles primarily. And of course, if there's any leftovers, you could turn that into electricity as well. And once we've got it down to petroleum, the other thing we can use it for is turning it into plastic bars. So after we're done with all of this, we'll be left with some amount of petroleum and some amount of natural gas. And in order to turn that into electricity, we throw it into a petrochemical generator, a relatively compact source of power. It is, and it burns 4 things. And the order of the icons there is petroleum gas, ethanol, high octane gas, and natural gas. The big advantage to the petrochem generator compared to the standard boiler is that it does not require any water, and it also doesn't make any steam. It just goes straight from fuel to electricity. So it is very easy to build, and you can also put them anywhere. They don't have to be next to water. So we've got a lot of research going here, and let's walk it back. And now we're down to sulfur here, where we take all of that sour gas we've been saving and we can turn it into sulfur, water, and a small amount of carbon dioxide. And if you find yourself with too much sour gas, you can just vent it. And if you find yourself with too much carbon dioxide, you can just vent it. And to make sulfuric acid, we take some of that sulfur, add some iron pellets and some water, and we make sulfuric acid. And of course it keeps going. There's more things that this unlocks, but for now, that's pretty good. And how are we doing on power? It's actually getting kind of close to maxing out, which is surprising. I wonder if at this point we should just max out the size of the power plant, because I don't think we're quite there yet. Yeah, it's at 16, so the proper ratio would be 20, which means we need 1 more of these. And it looks like we have run through all of that charcoal, so now it's going to start throwing the coke in. So there we go, there's 1 power plant filled up. Okay, now we need to do a concrete setup, and it's probably going to be in this general vicinity because this is where stone is, but there's really not a lot of room for it, so maybe not. Okay, new setup time. Now that we have it researched, we don't need to have all of that anymore. Well, I guess we can plan around 2 things. One is making the concrete slabs, and the other one is making the concrete blocks. Well, we're only going to need so many blocks. However, slabs are the kind of thing we would make a ton of. So we should probably plan around that. And we could do 30 a second now if we want to. That might be worth it. We'll see how big this ends up being. That requires the liquid concrete, which will come from gravel and silica. We need the silica, we need the gravel, and I can already tell that this is going to be a little big, but also it might be fairly similar to essentially how we did this, where we can have 1 red belt of silica, 1 of gravel, and then maybe 1 in the middle, and then we can add the water. So the thing here is we want to make sure that the input isn't too limited, and technically we're only putting out 15 stone a second, and doing it at this speed would be 22.5. How much is this set up for? The 15. So how about we do 15 here as well, because we might want to run both of these setups at the same time. So that gives us an idea there. We will need to have the iron rods, which can actually be made in these small assemblers. And we need 8 of those, which is a 1-to-1 ratio, so that's nice. It's a lot of iron ingots though. But we have our inputs taken care of, And the output looks good. And then we'll worry about the concrete blocks after all of this. So we have a big shopping list. We need to collect all of these items here. And it looks like one more drill is out of copper. And copper won't have to come from very far either, so that won't be a big deal. Okay, that should be the end of our shopping list. So let's figure out where we want to put this. Luckily, we've basically already figured out the build. It's just essentially this. And in fact, the numbers are identical. But because these are independent setups, we probably shouldn't link them together. And not much room, but down here, I suppose? A lot of trees in the way, but where else are we going to put it? Well, first part is turning the stone into gravel. And at this point, we probably do want to grab our construction crawler here, which is the one all the way out here. And for now, I suppose it's time to just kind of clear all of this out. And we don't want to crowd things too much, but stone is going to be coming from up there, which means it would basically be lined up with this. So for cleanliness, how about we try to line this up the same way, like right there. And of course, get rid of the evil flashing. And that will basically take care of the stone. So let's split this up. And then bring the stone in. And there it goes. We do need the red belt in the middle because 15 goes in and 30 goes out. So with that, we've got at least the gravel part done. And now the next part we're going to need is the silica. And we need 16 machines, and we've already done it. So we'll grab it. And how about let's line it up here because we can, and flip them this way. I don't know if I want to mash them right next to each other like that. How about we space them out by 3? Okay, and the input belt is the closer one, which makes sense. So we throw in the gravel, and it's going to take some of it to make the silica. And then at the end, we will have not quite 2 red belts, but we need the red belts for both the gravel and the silica. So get that out of the way. And unfortunately, we have this crater-shaped cliff in the way. And since that cliff is there, I suppose we'll just kind of line it up with these machines. We could put it all the way down here, but it would look kind of weird. So this is a little tricky because it has 2 inputs and 2 outputs. So we kind of need to be careful how we do it. If we do something like this, we can put some pipes in there, and out of curiosity, if we put one right here, will the short pipes reach if we did this? Unfortunately, no. So it has to be the long one. So basically, it would kind of go up like that. And we would have our 2 red belts of input. Each machine is relatively fast, but at this point, 1 inserter is enough. So it would be something like this. And let's line it up. Give it the total of 3 spaces, even though the pipes are in there. Get rid of extra pipes on the end. And then we can flip this, which is nice. So we'll put it right there. Change the way these inserters are so it just looks a little more symmetrical. It's annoying that there's a cliff here, but that's fine. We'll connect them, and how about, will this go straight up and go into the lake? Oh, it does. That was nice. So water's in everything. And now, when we hook all this up, we should finally be getting our liquid concrete. And it looks like it. It's green. And concrete's coming out. Okay then. Now we need another 8 machines. Wanted to leave this more room to expand, but I guess it could also just go straight down and just not be particularly square. Clear out more trees. But we'll see what the shape of this ends up being. Where it will have red belt in the middle with an output. It'll probably have a power pole in the middle as well. And then we need to get the iron in. And actually, if we put it here, made this a long-handed inserter. Kind of bulky to do it this way. It would work, but because we have a lot of space in the other direction, instead of that, we did it more like this. Then we can just do 1 inserter in, 1 inserter in, and it would just work. Then if we did another one, kind of want to flip it around here so it looks a little more symmetrical. It would be kind of like that. So would this work going the other way? Kind of. The belts aren't quite in the right direction, but it would work. And sure, I mean, we could place this here and have them be completely lined up, even though it's a little mashed. I think I'm actually fine with that. I would prefer it to be straight if possible. So we'll do that, and I'll also place it here with long head inserters just to make sure that it is straight. So then we take all of this, plop it right in here, and now we're lined up. Let's move these belts the other way. It might look slightly better if they're pointed into their inserter, because at least at this point the iron is very close by, and after all this concrete is ready, we will basically have 20 a second. So let's use a loader and throw it in an iron chest. We're using lots and lots of iron now, so that's kind of why we needed to automate the delivery of all of this, because it is going into everything now. So this is filling up, making all of the sticks, and now finally the liquid concrete. And there it goes. Making lots and lots of it. Well, I suppose we're going to start paving our factory with concrete here. Just grab it all and start paving. And it's gone. We're going to need a lot. But you see, the walking speed does help. It actually makes it very fast. So if we were actively in the process of paving our factory, it would not take very long, because that production speed is pretty good. Cool. Well, that's all done. And we're pretty close to finishing up all of that sulfur research. And there's a couple of useful things we will get out of our sulfuric acid. But first, how about we do the Nixie tubes? They fit the aesthetic of IR3 rather well, and they will help with our oil processing, so we can just see what the status is of various buildings and fluids without having to hover over them with our mouse. And that also gives us access to the bigger number versions, but those are a steel item, so we're going to have to wait on those. They are slightly misplaced. And we've been doing all of this in order to get access to explosives, which is sulfur, coke, and water, and then we add a bunch of that to a pipe to make cliff explosives, and finally we will be able to destroy cliffs. And this is another thing that IR3 just gives you, that if you need to make a canal to deliver water somewhere kind of weird, you can dig a trench using water fill explosives. And also it does give us access to the explosives analysis pack, which will then go into various military research. Right now that doesn't really lead into anything because we need the blue science first, but at least it will be ready to go. And one other thing that going through all this will give us is the ability to make batteries. But for now, let's consider this our next goal and stick with working on explosives, because it's still going to take quite a bit of oil processing to get to that point. All right, well, we've gone through all of this, and we know we're going to have 200 liquid concrete a second. And because doing the concrete tiles is a relatively low priority thing, we can share the output here with making the bricks. So we'll come in, say we want concrete blocks, 20 a second, and the numbers are basically the same. That will give us what we need, and that's actually probably way more than we're possibly going to need, but we might as well build them since we have space, which means we're going to need 16 assemblers. Looks like we are not making any of the small bronze poles because no bronze plates. Ah, that inserter is the wrong distance, because that needs to be there, and then that needs to be there. So now we're making them again. And the trains have arrived and everything is balanced out, and they are working fine. It's actually going to be quite a bit of work to convert from the bricks to the concrete, because every time we do this we're picking up a ton of bricks which then need to be processed. And we could just hold on to those bricks for a day when we need a ton of them, but really bricks don't go into that many things, so we should probably crush them instead. But I do have an idea here, that if we pick this up, keep cutting down the forest here, that we could actually line up these concrete bricks here, and this could just go basically just over there, and then we can use the other side of this for working on the blocks. So that's 4, 8, 12, and 16. We can connect those so they keep going. So now we will have 2 belts, one with each item we might want. We can use these loaders to load up some chests. Well, we connect this and they're all sharing the same concrete, so it might not run at full speed, but well, it does work. We're filling up. Well, let's put something off to the side here. How about 2 concrete blocks and also probably 2 stone bricks too, because we do need them for stuff. And we're still using these transfer plates, so there we go. We are good to go. And we are finding ourselves with a lot of junk now. Specifically, all of these bricks from repaving the factory. So this is one more thing we're going to need to handle. And it's going to make our scrapping machine very, very busy. But that's fine, we do have time for this. So how about we do 3 chests, and each one of them is requesting stone bricks. But it's actually going to take quite a while to go through every one of these bricks. So much so that you might want to put speed modules in this thing, because it is going to take quite some time. So how about we do that? And just crank it up with speeds. And then when it's caught up, we can make it efficient again. And with that, the research is complete. So now we have everything we need in order to pursue oil processing. But that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.